I'd like to welcome everyone to the 119th meeting of 7th Council of Municipality of South Dundas. We have already called this meeting to order and had our first closed session. We will be having one at the end of it too, as we did not have enough time to do everything we needed to do. Confirmation of agenda. Any additions or deletions or amendments from staff at this time?
No, there are not, Mr. Mayor.
Anything from council at this time?
No.
I'd like to add something that had come to my attention, and it will take a staff report, but it concerns the dock in Morrisburg and traffic signs at that location. So I know that the Director of Transportation is not here tonight, but he doesn't need to be here tonight. If council, I will discuss it, and then we can go on from there. So I'll add that as F. If there's nothing else, is there a disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Councillor Wells.
I'd like to declare conflict on 8B, 2022-53 site plan control Wells, County Road 2, Morrisburg, because I own the property.
Okay, so noted. Madam Clerk. Anything else from any other member? Seeing none, the adoption of minutes from a regular meeting of April 25th, 2022.
Moved by Councillor Wells, seconded by Councillor Lewis, that the minutes of the 118th regular meeting of council be adopted as circulated.
Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all heard in motion, those in favor, opposed, if any, motion carries. Tonight, delegations. With us tonight, we have Tyler Nelson, who is our Asset Management Coordinator, Financial Analysis, and he's going to give us a rundown on the asset management plan so far for South Dundas. Tyler, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I appreciate the opportunity to speak in front of you about asset management tonight. I'd like to go over the comprehensive analysis section of the asset management plan. I'm hoping this presentation can sort of catch you guys up to date on the progress of the asset management plan. So the four areas of focus I'd like to focus on today are life cycle planning, risk and criticality, the annual requirements, and levels of service. So I'll just remind you that this asset management plan only covers core municipal infrastructure assets. So that first part of the asset management plan will be due July 1st, 2022, and then all the other assets will be covered in the July 1st, 2024 asset management plan. So the core municipal infrastructure assets include water network, our wastewater, stormwater, roads, bridges, and major culverts. I'll just mention too that these 6 categories cover about 5,000 out of 5,600 of our asset inventory. So in the next slide, I have the replacement costs and source for all of the core municipal infrastructure assets. So you'll see at the bottom there that I have $263 million to replace all assets currently. Of course, this number is quite high, and a lot of other townships are dealing with coming across this number now too. So for the source of replacement cost, I'll just mention that for bridges and culverts, I used the OSIM report, and then for road surfaces, water and sewer buildings and equipment. I've used CPI tables to inflate historical costs forward, so not a perfect number, but it should give us a rough idea of what we'll need to spend. And then for water, sewer, and storm assets, I have user-defined costs. So these are estimates that come from Forterra catalog pricing, and also speaking with Dennis Villeneuve on water and sewer assets. So I will say that all of the user-defined costs have been, Dennis has seen them and has approved them. So yes, these replacement costs are very high, but there are a few ways we can lower these replacement costs. The best example would be to add life cycle planning for double surface treated roads. It's still possible to do for a lot of other assets, but this is the most obvious one, so I'll go into this one now. So the typical schedule of events for adding in a new, reconstructing a road would be to pulverize the road, add granular to grade and shape, and then you have your double surface treatment, and usually a fog seal is done afterwards too. Also, I should mention on the right, I have a list of prices that come from tender documents. So I'd like to get into a couple scenarios. So I have scenario 1, I have without life cycle events for a road, and then scenario 2, I have with life cycle events for a road. I'll just mention that Jeff Heineman would like to go with scenario 2 as much as possible when we have the funding for it. So scenario 1, I just use an example of Chenette Road at 4.9 kilometers with an in-service year of 2023 and a target condition rating of 7. I can come back to that a bit later. So I have on the top table there, I have the five events that go into adding a new surface. They may be out of order, but that's just so that the spreadsheet will work. And then I have a 20-year useful life on the first, or on that road. That doesn't mean that the road necessarily will make it 20 years. We would typically wait till around 2 or 3 condition rating before reconstructing the road. And then in the second scenario, I've added life cycle events in as well. So I've added a single surface and a single micro. So this just means around a 6 condition rating, and this can change, but around a 6 condition rating or after about 8 years, the event is triggered, so a single surface or double surface. Now some roads may be in worse shape and might need a double micro, and then some roads you could even add a couple more events in afterwards as well. So when we compare the two, I have just a reminder, scenario 1 is the without events. You'll see that the average condition jumps from 6.5 to 7.1, and the number of years above the target goes from 7 out of 15 years to 18 out of 29. So that's a 15% increase from 47 to 62. So I might be getting ahead of myself a little bit here, but when we're setting levels of service, we can set a condition rating as, let's say we want 7 out of 10, and that's just the amount of years that we're reaching that level of service. And so not only does condition improve, but the cost per year also drops as well, since we're addressing the asset a lot earlier. It's a lot cheaper to maintain an asset when you're addressing the issues earlier on rather than waiting. The only negative to this would be that you need to maintain early and you can't wait. So I just decided to come up with an estimate here of an annual requirement for life cycle costs without the events versus with the events, and you'll see there's a 90,000 drop. So this is not an exact number; it's just an estimate to show how the difference in the two. So I'd like to move on to risk and criticality. I don't know how many of you have worked with a risk matrix before, so I'll just explain it really quick. Along the y-axis, I have a scale of 1 to 5 for consequence of failure, and then a scale of 1 to 5 for probability of failure along the x-axis. So before I get to consequence of failure, likelihood of failure is just based on the condition of the asset. So if the asset is at 0, then the consequence of failure, the likelihood of failure will be 5 out of 5. And then for consequence of failure, it gets a little more complicated. I have it divided up where 30% is based on the replacement cost, and then 70% weight is based on the category value. So for replacement cost, I have it set so that an asset above $1 million is 5 out of 5 rating, and then less than 100,000 would be a 1 rating. And for the category value, some assets are obviously more important than others. So the most important ones would be the main water lines, trunk sewer lines, and then water and sewer buildings. So if I could just explain really quick, a trunk sewer line, for example, if you just look at the map there, I have the line going from west to east towards the sewer plant would be an example of a trunk sewer line, because all of the other branch sewer lines lead into it. So if there's an issue in that that trunk sewer line fails, then all of the branches are affected, as opposed to if just a branch fails, then it's only that road that gets affected. So it'd still be serious, a 4 out of 5, but not quite that 5 out of 5 rating. So I'll just show how some of them are determined. We've talked about Taylor Road Bridge has been discussed quite often in recent memory, so I figured I'd use it as an example. So for likelihood of failure, right now it has a 0 out of 100 condition rating, so definitely a 5 out of 5 rating. Whereas consequence, still a bridge is fairly important, however, it's not in town and there are ways around it, so 3.6 out of 5, still fairly high, giving it an 18 out of 25 risk rating. Now, if we move to an asset, I wanted to include one that had a 5 out of 5 consequence of failure. So the Mooresburg Water Plant, which would be one of our more important assets in this township. That one would have a 5 out of 5 consequence of failure, but since it was constructed in around 2006, I believe, it should have a 2 out of 5 likelihood, then lowering the risk rating to a 10 out of 25. So it's still a concern, yet not as much of a concern as the Taylor Road Bridge would be. So now we can throw these assets back in the risk matrix, and we can see that the Mooresburg Water Plant is at the top, and then the Taylor Road Bridge is at the very far right in the middle. I also threw a couple examples of high likelihood, low consequence assets in there as well. These are typically manholes and catch basin, since a lot of them aren't tended to, so they're in pretty bad condition, but they're also not very expensive to replace. So with the risk matrix, we can create an asset prioritization list. This will give us our highest risk assets. So obviously you can see I'm just using bridges and culverts as an example here, but you can see that Taylor Road Bridge sits at the top, and then Calhoun Road Bridge, and then Forest Road Bridge below. I do want to mention, of course, too, that the replacement cost for Taylor Road Bridge is a little high right now. I'm using the number from the OSIM report from 2021. I expect that number to be a bit lower. I should also mention too that this list isn't necessarily the deciding factor. It's just something to consider when making decisions. So moving on to annual capital requirement and levels of service. These are the areas that will have a lot more council involvement in future discussion. So you'll see here in this graph here that the late 50s and late 60s have a spike in bridge replacement costs. I should mention too that this annual capital requirement is when we're expected to replace the bridges and culverts. So the line I have across is the target annual capital requirement. Now, I want to make sure it's very clear that this is just a target. This is not what I expect us to have to spend in the next year. There's a lot there. But right now, if in a perfect world we would spend $1 million per year or 5.1 per 5 years just on bridges alone. So I know that's not we can't reach that, but that's just what the ideal numbers are. Now, that spike in the late 50s and late 60s, I believe, is because of the flooding of the Seaway in 1958. A lot of the assets were constructed around the same time. So a lot of other asset categories will have a spike like this. A good example would be catch basin and manholes. A lot of them were put in around 1958 and then left. And of course, because it's storm sewer network, it's not tended to very often. But since these catch basin and manhole assets have about a 75-year useful life, they would be all failing around the early 30s, so that's coming up even sooner. I also want to mention too that these estimated useful lives aren't necessarily guaranteed. We've had bridges and culverts that have well outlasted their estimated useful life. We've also had some, like the Taylor Road Bridge, that have not even come anywhere close to that 100 years. I believe Taylor Road Bridge was built in the late 70s, so that would only be about 50 years.
Sorry, it was a lot earlier than that, 30s, 20s, somewhere in there. We don't know officially, but it's close to 100.
I think I remember seeing an estimated
Yeah,
built
some
time.
of those numbers weren't right in the OSIM report, though.
Okay.
So not your fault.
Thank you for clarifying. So I want to move on to levels of service now, the other area that will have lots of council involvement. I just want to break up levels of service into two categories, your community and your technical levels of service. So typically your community levels of service are a description, and then your technical levels of service are a metric related to that description. So the example on this slide here is for bridges again. So this would be the description of traffic that is supported by municipal bridges, and then the technical levels of service would be directly related to it, which would be the percentage of bridges in the municipality with loading or dimensional restrictions. And then we move on to, sorry, that was scope, and then we move on to quality. This would include a description of images or, sorry, the description of images of the condition of bridges and how this would affect use of the bridges. And then we would have a technical level of service directly related to that as well. Typically, it would be the average bridge condition index value. So the scope, I just want to clarify, is who the service is for, versus quality would be more related to the condition of the actual asset. So where council comes in is trying to find the balance between these two. If you want a lower annual levy requirement, then you have to lower levels of service, and vice versa. If you want to raise levels of service, have to raise an annual levy requirement. So that concludes the presentation. If you have any comments or questions, I'm sure between Lachlan or myself, we could get you an answer.
Okay, a lot to digest there, that's for sure. Councilor Mellon, have you woke up yet? Because I was going to call on you to start this round, please.
Wow. This report has to go in the hands of the new council first thing. I mean, we've been talking about this, you know, and our shortcomings, our shortfalls in, you know, on our asset management and, you know, the numbers, especially on, you know, 25 billion asset management replacement cost on bridges and culverts alone. Now that's, you know, now maybe a little inflated, but I mean, that sure, you know, strikes home to me. It's a good report, thank you. I'm just hoping that we can use or leverage this type of information when we go after funding. And that's, I think, you know, where, you know, we've said it, we can't afford everything right up front, but so let's hope we can utilize this report to, you know, leverage some funding down the road, provincial, you know, federal, but I mean, you know, the reality of the situation is that, you know, it's going to be hard for us to go it alone.
Councilor Wells?
Very good report, Tyler. Like this asset is really going to come, like Ontario I'm taking right now, the reason this is for, so when it comes to give them grants out and that, we got, okay, we're doing our due diligence, this is this and this is that. So at the end, it's something that not this council, but next council will be able to use to get where we're going to get. Now, these estimates, they're going to fluctuate every year. Like you're not going to take, you have to go by the times. Like look at Taylor Bridge, like we were ready to spend 2 million, it's down like just over 800,000. So with everything coming together, it's gonna be great, especially to get where, not just this municipality, but everyone to get Ontario back in shape again as far as infrastructure goes. So, thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
I just had a quick question, Tyler. Good report. Thoughts or plans on how we communicate this to the public? So those of us sitting around the table, we're used, you know, it's our job to digest this high level stuff, but I think it's going to be important to actually involve an education plan to connect with the public so they kind of understand what we're looking at, what the asset management is, and how it's got value, and how, you know, we should kind of welcome. I imagine some of this information needs to be public, you know, where they can have a look and see what the council of the day is dealing with. So is there plans or
I think one thing we need to keep in mind when doing that is to not only explain the levels of service, or sorry, not only explain the annual requirement, but also the level of service. I think everyone, I mean, no one wants to see tax rate go up or rates go up. But I think if they see the levels of service behind it, it kind of gives it some context. So I think that's very important to explain the two of them.
So do you see that as do we have like a parallel communication plan to get this information out? Because you're right, the levels of service, right? Everybody wants that 5-star service, but everybody wants to pay for the 1-star service. So, you know, I think our residents deserve to kind of, if the council of the day, this council has talked a lot about it, but the next council is having a lot of time and energy spent on this, I think it's imperative that we bring the residents along with us without them maybe having to dive into a 60-page report. Maybe we need some communications around, you know, even just defining, Tyler, what your role is. You know, we have somebody here that is doing this work. It's very extensive. This is what we're looking at. You know, that 263 million, it was million, right? It was
Right,
a billion, million to replace all. You know, that type of thing. I think there needs to be some education and information for our residents.
Councilor Lewis?
It was an excellent report, and I do have to agree with the deputy mayor. I think the people should see this report, and then they know exactly, not only the next council, but many councils down the road. But it will definitely give the next few councils plus staff, whenever they decide to go to federal or provincial for infrastructure grants. So the report is a good report, but I think, as I said before, I think the citizens of South Dundas should see it also, and then they understand what this council and future councils go through year after year after year. And I think that's where I'll leave it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. So when I did run in 2018, that was one of my platforms that we needed an asset management plan, knowing that the province was forcing us down the road. However, also knowing that the municipality was floundering somewhat at the time and not really having a plan. Council made the plan and staff enacted the plan, but then you end up having holes in it. Your plan presents us the challenge of a plan with no holes. Like, you see it black and white, and it's different on our side of the table because we have to balance that with the affordability of what the residents can afford. It also demonstrates very significantly that an infrastructure levy, as much as it wasn't the right time for one, is something that needs to be enacted just to bring some funding up. I know we can rely on the province and sometimes the feds to help us along, but that well isn't always going to be there either. And it seemed like it was been Christmas the last 4 or 5 months at the provincial level, and that's great. However, it can't be Christmas every day, and they may just reel her in once they figure out that that's just not a very viable plan. But so, very glad it's here. I was going to suggest that we just literally give it to any candidates that walk in the door and sign up, but we literally scare them away. But however, you know, we have to figure out how to do it, and it's a big universal we. It's we at South Dundas. Residents of South Dundas have to realize that it isn't. Council can fix every road up in South Dundas if you want. We just got to find the money, and the money's going to come out of somebody's pocket, and mainly the taxpayers here in South Dundas. Probably will not be very palatable, but if I was going to give any guidance to the next council, is that perhaps in the first 2 years you bite the bullet and do it, but you have to have a good plan to demonstrate that you're going to do it right. bridges like Taylor Road that fail are not the way you deal with asset management. And as much as it has not, or it appears that it will not cost us as much as we thought, it's still gonna be close to $1 million that has to come out of some pocket. And so hopefully, with your work and the people that will be sitting around this table come fall in the next 4 years, that, and along with the rest of staff, that will come up and use that plan, use it diligently. Don't disregard it, because the worst thing that can happen is taking that plan and saying, we'll never be able to afford it, and then just make plan on the fly or do nothing. And that's going to do a disservice not only to the residents of Dundas, but certainly the council after this one that's coming up, because then they'll end up saying, what are we going to do? We landed up with some of that on our plate the last 4 years. We've done the best we can with it, but we're still not where we need to be. And that's just life, and that's the way it works. So once again, thanks a lot, gentlemen. I appreciate all the work you do. I know you enjoyed the numbers. Both of you is way too much maybe some days, but that's okay. So we'll move on to action requests, and the first one is FES 2022-04, the surplus tires from the fire services.
Moved by Councillor Mellon, seconded by Councillor Lewis, that council accept report FS 2022-04 to approve the disposal of surplus tires using a sealed bids process, and that council authorize proceeds of the sale to be included in revenue for the 2022 Fire and Emergency Services budget.
Chief, welcome.
Mayor, the report in front of you is, we discussed this at the 2022 budget discussions when I gave the fleet repair list for this year. We talked about replacing the tires on the rescue here in Morrisburg. So that job has been done. The tires, we are now housing them here in Morrisburg in our storage building. My recommendation to council is that we run the ads like we did last time, which we were very successful in selling our surplus tires, and that any money made would help offset some of the cost, increase in cost and parts and fuel within the maintenance and fuel budget. If you have any questions or comments, I would be happy to take them at this time.
Okay, Mayor?
Just wondering, when we advertise and stuff, do we take the advertising expense off of what we get for the tires?
I'll have to defer that to the communications. That I don't know.
I suspect not. How's
Okay.
that?
We certainly can.
There was a lot of nothing
We'll cover the
there, so
cost
I
of the
suspect
advertising.
not.
I'm just thinking that, I mean, you know,
That's the perfect world, I understand that.
yeah, and you know, if the tires, if it's something that's worth spending a lot of advertising dollars, then it's only fair to kind of have that removed, because you're doing it so you get the higher amount, and it would just maybe dissuade people from spending $400 on advertising if we're only selling them for $100.
And I believe the last time we just did the local papers, Caitlin?
Yeah, and yeah, we have an advertising budget line that all of the paper stuff comes out of.
I would still kind of probably take it off of that, but
Anyway.
kind of like fundraising, right? If you have your expenses, you got to take it off of the amount you make as the fundraiser benefit, right?
Anyway, I'm going to leave that to Lachlan's superior mind over there, because I imagine it's just turning like that. So I can do that, no problem. Anyway, good comment. Councilor Lewis.
No questions.
Councilor Mellon.
Roll on.
Councilor
I have
Lewis.
no questions.
Nor do I. All heard the motion, those in favor, opposed if any, motion carries.
Thank you.
Next one, ED 2022-04, streetscape beautification.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Gardner, seconded by Councillor Lewis, that council accept report ED 2022-04 to approve the streetscape beautification efforts for both Brinston and Williamsburg as presented.
Rob, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Great to be here this evening. I know that I've had a few KRRs on looking at doing the streetscaping through Princeton and Williamsburg. And I just happened to be speaking with Sherry the other day, and she's going to be repaving her parking lot, so that's going to look nice. And I was in Princeton the other day and noted the work that Carol's done to the general store, and also the work that Curtis Whitaker is doing to his building. It looks absolutely beautiful. So I think these streetscaping elements will certainly benefit both Princeton and Williamsburg. So the report that you have in front of you, the minimum options that I'm hoping to get approved tonight is the purchase of the banner brackets, the upper bracket and lower bracket that we'll have to put on the hydro poles, the banners for both Princeton and Williamsburg, and also the piano key kind of block crosswalk at County Road 31 and 18 in Williamsburg, and at County Road 16 and Gilmer Road in Princeton, just to kind of highlight and provide a little bit of sense of a streetscape for that. I did hear from back from the counties on the cost of the line painting and that, and it's about $1,000. So we can do all these items within the $15,000 budget that we have. So looking for council to approve the motion so I can get working with the company, get working with the folks in Williamsburg and Princeton, selecting the banners that they'd like to see up, so we have them up in time for the tourism season. And there also will be a subsequent resolution for council to pass just to request the crosswalks, the block crosswalks in Princeton and Williamsburg that we would forward to the counties. So if council has any questions or comments, I'm certainly eager to get this project moving.
Thank you, Rob. Comments from the tourism economic development person on council?
Oh, geez. Okay. I think it's fabulous, obviously. And I do like the fact that you're engaging with the shop owners in those intersections to get their input. I think that's vitally important. And I think that you'll probably find they add extra stuff, just, extra attention or whatever. So, no, I think it's great. The only question I had with the crosswalks, you're thinking piano keys?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and they call it a block crosswalk.
Okay.
So to kind of give it definition so people actually see it, and we will have to put some signage up.
Okay.
But that again would be covered within the budget that we
Okay,
have.
perfect. That's it.
Council Lewis?
No, I'm kind of glad to see that we're moving forward with Williamsburg and Princeton. It's nice to see that back north they do get something. And I hope the people in that area appreciate what you have done. And I think the sooner we get started, the better it's going to be. Thank you.
Council Wells?
Yeah, this is just comments because I own businesses back there. The crosswalk painting, at the end of the day, I don't know if it's gonna turn out because, first of all, like, whether it's Princeton or Williamsburg, everyone jaywalks. Like, they cross anywhere. Like, there's just not a certain spot they cross in Williamsburg. They cross down at Jay's, they cross up at Sherry's or wherever. So I don't know, I guess for looks, if they're just going across, you see this, but then you're saying about signage for crossing, then I don't know. I'm kind of up in the air. The banners and everything, which it'll beautify it a bit. It'll look nice. So I'm just, the cross line painting, I'm not 100% convinced on that yet, but I'm not against it either, so.
And I think the reason for the doing that block crosswalking was just to provide some definition, not necessarily just for the people that live in Williamsburg or Princeton, but also people that travel through the area, so they would see it in that. And the signage is just something that legally we have to do.
No. As long as we're well under budget right now, and I can't see, the only thing I would recommend is not to use the paint that the county's been using on streetscape and County Road 18 because it don't last. It's almost gone.
It's first year, I was told. It wears off fast.
Anyways, I'm good to go.
Council Mellon?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Bylaws. Rob, the only question I have is, how are you reaching out, and I'm sort of echo Deputy Mayor Gardner's view on, I'm glad to see you are reaching out to the people in Princeton and Williamsburg, but how are you reaching out to what, individuals, groups, to get feedback on these banners?
Yeah, it's, you know, I'm gonna be visiting the businesses in Williamsburg, along County Road 31. I'll have the copies of the banners and just, you know, getting their opinion on selecting like 1, 2, or 3 choice, and then, you know, majority kind of rules. And the same thing will happen in Princeton. I've also talked to Cindy Alt-Peters and some of the ladies that she is well versed with in Princeton, and they offered to assist me in also providing some direction on the color of the banners and that type of thing. So,
Okay, as long as you know, get a wide,
yeah. But I will be visiting them.
okay, thank you. I'm good with it, great.
I'm certainly good with the decorative banners. I think they're long overdue in Williamsburg and Princeton, and certainly will add to the eye appeal of those two villages. The line painting, did you say you were coming back to council with that?
No, I did receive the quote, and it's $1,000.
Okay.
And that would be done through the counties.
Okay, so visually, you're gonna put the piano type, so
On all
across
four.
all 4 ways?
All 4 ways, yes.
Okay.
In
And then
both
we'd
ends.
have to have some sort of signage on 31, because it's not a stop.
And yes, and that's why I mentioned that the signage, it is a legal requirement, but the signage is within the budget that we have.
Okay, well, I wasn't in Councilor Wells' camp. I did have some concerns. Like, he's right, people go wherever they want to walk, and I think the biggest jaywalkers in Williamsburg go across that Williamsburg meat marketplace there. They just kind of go from the parking lot to the place, and that's life, but maybe he needs to move one there. But anyway, just that aside, there are a lot of people that do cross in 31 and 18, so let's go for it and see what it looks like. You know, it's that eye appeal on the pavement that does, I wouldn't say distract, but it kind of refocuses what you're doing, and we haven't had a lot, at least I haven't, and Councilor Wells can correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of speeding complaints through Williamsburg.
Especially the OPP, like when we had that.
Well, yeah, them aside, normal
aside,
traffic,
it's pretty good.
yeah,
Pretty
so
good.
this will slow it down a bit more, because people all of a sudden say, oh, there's a crosswalk, so that's okay. Let's give it a try, and we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Just
Seeing none-
there's the supplemental,
So the original motion is on the floor, so I would ask that you call the vote on this, and then we would do the subsequent motion for the county.
Okay, so all in favor of the motion? Those opposed? Motion carries.
Okay.
Then we have another motion, Dave?
Yes. Moved by Councillor Mellon, seconded by Councillor Lewis, that the Council of the Municipality of South Dundas respectfully requests that the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry install pedestrian block crosswalks in Princeton at the intersection of County Road 16 and Gilmore Road, and Williamsburg at the intersection of County Road 31 and County Road 18.
Any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all in motion, those in favor, opposed if any, motion carries. That's it?
thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Next one is ES 2022-11, Zambergan engineer appointment.
Moved by Councillor Mellon, seconded by Deputy Mayor Gardner, that Monica Shade, VP of Engineering and Sales of Shade Group Incorporated, be appointed by resolution as the engineer to prepare a new engineer's report for a minor improvement of the Zambergan Municipal Drain under Section 78.5 of the Drainage Act.
Justin, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me. In front of you is a short report for a minor realignment under the Drainage Act. It's a new section that was put in last year. The work proposed is only located on one property, so it doesn't need a huge update to the current report. It'll just be a separate report just to do a minor realignment. So first step in that is accepting the request, and then appointing Monica Shade as the engineer to complete it.
Okay, comments, questions, concerns, Councilor Mellon?
No, it's pretty straightforward. It moves us forward with where we want to get to on this one, so no, I'm good.
Councilor Wells?
No, I'm good.
Deputy Mayor?
Good.
Councilor Lewis?
Good.
Okay, yeah, we're all good. I think if the landowner wants to do something like this, and we all know that, recognize that that's the way it gets paid for, then we're all good with it.
Perfect.
There's no further comments or questions. All heard in the motion. Those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion carries. Thank you, Justin. Next one's FS 2022-04, Taylor Road Bridge Financing.
Moved by Councillor Wells, seconded by Councillor Lewis, that council accept report FS 2022-04 and direct staff to commence negotiating debt financing with Ontario Infrastructure and Lands Corporation to finance $865,000 for the Taylor Road Bridge replacement.
Lachlan, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to thank Mr. Mason, our Deputy Treasurer, for drafting this report, or doing this report, and I hope he's enjoying Florida right now, watching the Formula One over the weekend, so that's why he's not here, unfortunately for him. You can see the recommendation before council is to take out the whole amount of $865,000 and use Ontario infrastructure loan funding. That was, as was discussed during council, obviously the number has, or sorry, not council, during budget. That number has diminished quite significantly since those conversations, but the recommendation of administration does not. Mr. Mason prepared what it would look like over a 10-year amortization and a 15-year amortization. I printed you your papers. I'm sorry for the people online. Our e-scribe just cut off that last column, but you have it in front of you. So I'm looking at your financing options that is highlighted in green. Just an amount, if you do it over 10 years, that 3.7% times 864 equates to about 1.35% of the tax rate added next year. And then the 76 is almost bang on at 1%. So the recommendation in front of you is to fund it exclusively through Infrastructure Ontario. But there are options, and that you can see finance from reserves as well as a hybrid model should council wish to go that route.
Okay, if council allows, I'd like to speak on this first. I'm not in favor of debt financing the entire bridge. Reason being is we do have the OCIF funding that we now have freed up from the water. That was in Iroquois, which is on number 2 OCIF from water budget, $420,000. I don't think it's prudent that we go further into debt and then have that money set aside. As much as we need the money, that was money that the government gave us to spend. And this is a good tool to spend it on. It'll allow us to have less debt going forward, because every bit of debt that South Dundas takes on increases or gets us close to the ceiling that we will not be able to borrow any longer. And I don't think any council wants to go down that road, because if something fails, then you're really in trouble. I don't think we're there yet, but because we have borrowed a lot of money in this last term, but we've done the best we can in doing that. So my recommendation would be to use the OCIF for sure, and whatever other funds that are available to do kind of a 50-50, and then borrow it over a short term. There's a term here that has been presented, I'm just zinging down to it, for 5 years. It'll give us payments of about $31,000, I think, or not, yeah, that's twice, that's 60,000. Well, maybe a little longer than that, or 10 years, but shorten it up so it's over and done with. Because the longer it's on, the interest rates at 3.47 in today's world is still pretty reasonable. And very manageable going forward, but that's my opinion. I defer to council and whatever they thought, but we can either borrow it all or do the 50-50. So, Councilor Wells.
Well, myself, going over the numbers, I definitely agree with the OCIF. Myself, for the reserves, I would personally myself, if we could pay for it, I would pay for it. Reserves are there to use, the road reserves, 200-some thousand. Well, you know, next year in the budget, whoever's here, they just put some money back. I hate paying interest, so not to get in full detail, if I was, my choice would be number 2. Reserves are there for exactly what we're doing. We're fixing the bridge and we got the money. Instead of paying interest, it's paid for, it's out of the way, move on. So that's the route I would take. Well, okay, I'm just gonna stick with this. I had another comment, but that's the way I would do this, Mayor. My choice would be 2, to pay it off and just call it a day and put money back in next year, back in the reserves, like that's how reserves get put up through the budget, and we'll go from there.
Okay, Council Mellon?
Yeah, I don't like paying interest any more than anybody else. The OCIF funding, that's the savings from the Carmen Road, right? Okay. Where else, I guess, can that money be utilized? That 420? What other infrastructure failures have we got that are coming down the pipe that might come up and bite us?
May I say this, Council Mellon? Pick your bridge.
Hey?
Pick your bridge.
Pick your bridge, right.
Calhoun is probably number 2.
Okay. My suggestion is, I'm not in favor of borrowing at all. I would not touch the road reserve for bridges or the 2022 budget contribution. There's 322,000 and change. I wouldn't touch that at all, because we went down the road, we discussed it, and we decided that we didn't want to put any more on a tax increase or a special levy. But that number on that asset management there tonight just speaks volumes to me. We need money in that reserve, because we don't know what's going to happen in 6 months or a year's time down the road. If we deplete them, we're going to have to borrow the money, and we're going to have to, might as well just come right out and say it, we're going to be borrowing money to fix bridges and culverts. So to me, I would leave those 2 funds alone. The OCIF funding, I'd be honest with you, I had in my notes, I would use half of that money, 210, and the general working capital reserve, I would use it. So leaving the road reserve, the budget, and the 2022 budget contribution, like, you know, knock down what we would borrow by $331,527. So we're still left with around $533 to borrow. But that OCIF funding, I have it at half. I could probably be persuaded without a whole lot of arm twisting to utilize that whole OCIF funding on the bridge. But the 2, the road reserve and the bridges and the culverts, those 2 top items, I would not touch. I would leave them out. I would leave them in the reserve.
Council Lewis?
Myself, I wouldn't touch the reserves at all. A rainy day is gonna come, and we're gonna need those reserves. And to me, the reserves aren't really overly big to start with. You know, if you say 222,000 in the road and bridge reserve, really when it comes to a road or a bridge, that's peanuts. So I'm gonna agree with the mayor. I would use that 420,000 from OCIF, and I would borrow the rest for 10 years. I think 5 is a little short. So I would use the 420 plus 10-year at 3.75%. That's the road I would go, because I don't want to see the reserves depleted.
Mayor?
I actually am of the same thought process. I like the hybrid model. I would definitely use the OCIF funding. And if we could maybe take, not use full reserves, but try to maybe pull, even if it's 50,000 or whatever, and then fund the rest. I think it's a fine line between, you don't want to drain the reserves, but we don't want to go into deep debt if we don't have to. So I'm with you, Mayor. I agree with your proposal.
Do you have something more to add, Councilor Wells?
Well, it doesn't really matter the way it went around the table, but myself, what I'm hearing here, like, whether you're depleting a reserve or not, like, down the road, if you're saved for a rainy day, well, you have to borrow. So if we don't have to borrow and we get by that rainy day, it's money we're not paying in interest. It don't matter how you go about financing this. It's how, like, a rainy day, well, the rainy day is right here. We got to pay for a bridge. Pay for the bridge. There's no more, you're not paying interest. You build your reserves up again. That's what the reserves are there for. What we have on our plate today is the Taylor Bridge. It has to be paid for. We have the reserves. We have everything to pay for this. Pay it. Move on. And the rainy day comes, well, we're going to, whether you borrow today or the next day, it's the same thing. So I don't understand why we're borrowing money, but that's the way I would look at it as a business point, but it's, we got to vote, so.
Okay, I'll go around again. Councilor Mellon?
I can
Anything
remember
further?
not too long ago, we were borrowing money for less than 3.75, 3.95. Let's not kid ourselves, that rate's going up. So whether we borrow at 3.75 for 10 or, squeeze her in at 5 or run her out to 15, in a year's time or year and a half time, I'm afraid we're gonna be paying probably considerably more interest rate if we have to borrow money than to fix bridges and culverts. So I'm gonna stick with mine because I don't want to spend any more interest. I don't want to spend 3.75 over 10 years, but I'm afraid that it could be 4.5 over 10 years in a year's time. So I'm not in favor of borrowing the whole amount. I want him, the OCIF funding and the general working capital reserve, yes, maybe, but the other two, I don't want to touch because we're going to need that money. We're going to have to borrow it, and it's going to cost us more in a year's time. Somebody's going to cost somebody more in a year's time.
Okay.
No, I'm staying where I am.
I mean, it's a compelling argument, but to Councillor Mellon's point, the interest rates aren't going down. So if we know that there will be future projects that we will be required to potentially borrow money on, I think that finding a balance now where we pay what we can and borrow a little bit, I think, like I said, the hybrid model is where I land.
Okay. I'm still there, and I know nobody can I make a comment and then I'm going to go back to staff on the whole mess. Because now you've heard where council want to go, so then you can make up what you think is best. I know nobody likes paying interest. However, there are times when paying interest gives you an opportunity to do something in business, but also in this municipal field, it allows you not to take all the money you got in your piggy bank and spend it. And we got to have some money. We all said we wanted reserves when we strategically sat here a number of years ago. We depleted some reserve because we had no choice, but paying it quicker saves interest costs, also makes that number a bit higher and a little more edgier to work with in the short term. So, but once you make the payment and everything cash flows, and that's one thing about municipality, you can make the cash flow work no matter how hard you try because you pay taxes. So it either comes out of that or somewhere else. So if I was looking at just the 864, 424, cut it in half, that's 432, 212, then that's 420. It's going to take 95% of it and a little bit more from working capital, and then you can kind of half and half it and pick your term and away you go. So now I'm going to turn it over to the staff. You've heard where council wants to go. Go ahead.
So just one comment for council, just so council's aware. So the interest rates you see in front of you are a snapshot as of the day we printed them, so they do change. That was some of the rationale of bringing it forward to council sooner, is that we anticipate interest rates are going to continue to climb. Bank of Canada's already calling for hopefully maybe a 0.75% increase. So we want to try and get it in the queue as quickly as we can so that we can get that interest rate set. It might be lower, it could be higher, we don't know, but that number will change a little bit just for council's information.
Yeah, that's true. It's just like any debt we have taken on. The number is the number till the mayor and the treasurer sign
Correct.
the dotted line, which is a legal document, and then that takes some time, so.
Yeah.
Anyway, Lachlan?
Yeah, and if I understand it, I've not been involved in Infrastructure Ontario loans at this point in my career. But the debenture date start here is January 8th, and we already know there was an increase of 50 basis points onto that. And I'm sorry if Sean's on, wondering if I have that date right, but there is interest rate risk is what I'm kind of driving at, is much like council has said. You know rates are going up. You're fighting inflation presently and stagflation. I'm not somebody who likes to borrow. In fact, pressed to borrow, I moved municipalities the first time. So you can, I relate strongly with Councillor Wells. But in order to get a decision here, I understand, like, it seems everybody, OSIF 420, yes. And from past practice in South Glengarry, because that's where most of my history is, we always use OSIF for taxpayer. We never put it into user pay systems because we felt it could benefit everybody. But there was an argument that it also benefiting those user pay systems, especially when you have a Morrisburg and an Iroquois, can be quite advantageous too. So it's nice to have that money freed up. So 420 OSIF seemed unanimous around the table, if I understood that properly. And then there were some thoughts on how to use the budgeted contribution as well as reserve, with some members saying a partial amount and others saying more. So I guess if you're looking at a round number, you could probably use 80,000 of any of those two numbers, or 180,000 to get closer to that paying less to in interest. I do recommend typically trying to match as much as you can. And in this case, I do like 10 years as presented, because your borrowing should never exceed your asset, but this is a bridge, so you have a wide scape, not like a wide light. Oh my goodness, a long life cycle. Sorry for my failure to speak there. And to give some perspective, again, and I apologize to administration for always using South Glengarry too, because it's where my body of knowledge is. South Glengarry is assessment rich, and the taxes that are collected are 9.5 million, whereas here they're 7.7 million. It would just imagine an extra 1.8 million. That would be a godsend to any community. But even at 9.5 million, they feel pressed to there. And regardless of where you're at, there's always more to be done. And council, at the last budget 2020 there, had a reserve transfer to bridges, just bridges alone, of $500,000. So it's a hard step to take, but I do encourage you and to encourage the next council, if you are part of it. Now I'm rambling, a little off topic, to say there are large amounts out there, and it takes concerted effort. So 420 from OSIF, and then I guess to start, a minimum 80,000 from one of Roads Reserve Bridges or the 2020 budget contribution, or do people want considerably more as a consensus? Because I just want to make sure that we come back to you with the right amount.
Well, from what I'm hearing, it seems like we want to keep the road reserve bridges and that 322 in reserves for this year, because we have the Calhoun Bridge on the list for next year, and other bridges that we have to start making the pile, so we're ready. We don't have to borrow every time we got to fix a bridge, because this is a bit unique. There's no doubt we probably wouldn't have borrowed to fix, but now we're borrowing to replace. A big difference. So I know you want to, you're still in the same wave. Okay, Councilor Mellon, you're still.
Why don't we split the 864 in half, take the OCF funding and come up with another, what the hell are we short, 40,000, 38,000 to, you know.
No, you're only short a little bit, actually.
Split
10 grand,
that
12 grand.
864 in half. We borrow you know, we borrow the whatever, half of the 864.
Okay.
What's the interest rates on a 5-year? Do we have that?
I don't have that offhand, but it would be
It'd be
less
higher.
because there's, generally, is it not less on these ones?
Yeah, I'm not sure what it would be.
What was that, Councillor Mellon?
Eh?
What was your question?
Oh, sorry, what's the interest rate on a 5-year?
So it tends to be a little lower,
Yeah,
So
I'm thinking would it be 3.5?
but that's just an example, right?
Yeah.
Don't forget, these are numbers
That's
that
right,
have
it could be
been,
3.75.
you can just, in your mind, you say it's a little less,
Yeah,
but the payments are higher. So that means it hits
Okay.
the tax rate a little harder instead of being very gentle. Over time.
I would borrow half of 864. You know, I'd go
How many years?
for
5 or 10? Make a decision.
10.
I still say
Half and half?
half and half.
How many years?
10, definitely.
Sure, 10.
Okay. That's where we're at.
Okay.
So
Yep.
just for context, so half is 432, and if we're taking 420 from OSIF, we've got to come up with 12,000 and change.
Yeah, well, that's
So we can
the
take it
general
from one of
working
the
ruse
reserves
piggy
or
bank, because you
whatever.
got it on the table here now.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
okay. We can do it that way then.
okay.
Okay.
Yes.
If I may, through you, Mr. Mayor, just for a course of procedure, is this something we will obviously vote counter to the resolution? Is there friendly motion ability in that? I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
No, I would suggest, so the motion, Sean's motion is on the table. So I would say that someone either withdraw this motion and we'll put a new motion on the floor, or that you can vote on this and defeat it ultimately and then propose a new motion.
Okay. Who moved and seconded it?
It was moved by Councillor Wells and seconded by Councillor Lewis.
I don't think Councillor Wells is moved for a friendly amendment at this time. So. Okay, let's vote on this specific motion, and we can always make a new one if we have to. So what's on the table is finance 100%. Anything further on that motion tonight? Well, heard motion. Those in favor of that? Those opposed? Okay, so that's defeated.
Yeah.
Council's desire is to do a 50-50, so can you craft a motion in that regard, and then staff can work on whatever they do to, using the OSIF money plus working reserves for the remainder on a 10-year term.
Yes. So I would say that I'll read the motion and then ask for someone to move and second it, that council accept report FS 2022-04 and direct staff to proceed with OSIF funding in the amount of $420,000, $12,000 to be funded from one of the reserves. I'm not sure if you want to specify it in the motion, but
Yes,
working reserve.
Working capital
Working reserve,
yes.
and borrow the remainder at a term of 10 years at a rate of 3.75%. Oh, to remove the rate, take the rate
Yeah,
out.
take
'cause
the
it's
rate out,
Okay.
just over a 10-year term.
amortization. Okay. So if you're happy with that, I would ask for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Lewis, seconded by Deputy Mayor Gardner.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, all heard in motion, those in favor, opposed if any, motion carries. Okay, I knew it wasn't gonna be easy, but it had to be done. Thanks, Lachlan. Oh, next one's gonna be just as much fun. Next one, CS 2022-05, fees and charges.
Moved by Councillor Lewis, seconded by Councillor Mellon, that council approve the landfill fee schedule as presented or amended as to be discussed, and that the 2022 fees and charges bylaw be brought forward for approval at the May 24th, 2022 regular meeting of council.
Go ahead.
So as you know, at the last meeting, we brought forward the 2022 fees and charges bylaw. There were some minor amendments that were discussed and recommended by council at the time, and there was a fulsome discussion relating to the landfill fees, which resulted in deferral of the bylaw. So there were some changes recommended at that meeting, which we captured, which required a removal of the flat rate $10 minimum charge per trip, and incorporation of this fee into the various sections of the schedule, save and except for the large items. Council wanted to see some clarification on the difference between the types of construction waste and the removal of the fee for scrap metal and tire disposal. So I apologize, the schedule is a bit kind of difficult to read, but I just wanted to track changes so you can see where the changes are. So again, removes the minimum charge, the $10 minimum charge. There's clarification in the 2 columns. Construction or demolition deviates between contractors and residential construction waste. Again, removal of reference to the minimum charge in each of the various sections. And then again, we did not make any changes to the large appliances. And then explaining that there is no charge for scrap metal, as we actually get a rebate on that, and there are no charge for tire disposal. So I'll leave it at that, Mr. Mayor, unless there are any questions.
Okay, Deputy Mayor?
So, should we define that, like, branches is no charge? Like, because we had some conversation about the size of branches. If you drop them off, there would be a charge if it's over a certain width versus if it's just like trimmings from a shrub. So I don't know if does that need to be defined in there?
CEO?
Probably should. Yeah, we can define that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like compost, that type of thing? needs to
Composting,
be-
regular residential composting, there'd
Yeah.
be no fee. Whereas if it's a contractor bringing in a trailer full of
Exactly.
branches, we can define that.
Exactly.
Yep.
Okay, that was my only, I think that was my, oh, and you have to define e-waste as well, right? Because is there a charge for that?
Electronic waste. No.
Okay, so it's not defined in here. Okay.
That's it.
No, I'm happy.
Council Mellon?
Deputy Mayor clarified my point, thank you.
Council Wells?
I'm good with everything.
Okay. I appreciate the clarification, because I think, the compost was free of charge already. It was the branches that were giving us a challenge, and I think, you have to define branches size-wise too, because a lot of people bring what I consider brush, and that's acceptable. When they start bringing logs of certain size, then that becomes a little unacceptable. And it's certainly contractors, those who cut down trees for a living, need to charge appropriately to make that disappear. This one thing I had circled here was garbage bags. And we charge $1.25 for an extra bag, correct? How long has it been at $1.25?
I've been here for 14 years, and I believe it was $1.25 then.
Or
No?
$1?
Was it $1?
It used to be $1.
Okay.
We raised it just this. I thought we raised it by a quarter,
I think about 5 years.
or 50 cents.
Maybe 6.
6 years ago, maybe?
Yeah, but 6 years ago, it went from $1 to $1.25.
Should we charge that a little bit higher? The challenge is if people feel it's too much, they'll make it disappear, but $1.25. Okay, reference-wise, sort of reference-wise, municipality in North Grenville, you're paying $3.40 for a bag for every bag. And we're charging $1.25 for an extra.
Rockville is $3 a bag. You get one bag free, and then it's $3 a bag, like a tag afterwards.
I don't think we're in a Brockville situation where you can't know where to go, but I mean, someday if we land up going to a transfer station, $1.25 is gonna look awful cheap. I can tell you that right now, so we can leave it there, I don't care, but I'm thinking it seems, it's not a moneymaker, I assume,
No.
from a revenue point
No,
of
it's
view.
not.
I'm just trying to think of what's fair.
How many do we sell? Like, how heavily used is it? Would we?
We can definitely bring that number back if you want at the next meeting if you want,
Well-
but I would say we're probably $1,000 to $2,000 maybe a year in revenue.
Why don't we just round it off to $20, then we don't have to give any quarters back. Simple.
That's actually good.
Okay, Council Wells has proposed $2.
I go with that.
Sure, why not?
Sure.
Okay, we'll crank her up to $2.
Okay.
The other one, the other one wasn't related to the landfill. Landfill is good, all the red is reasonable. When there was when you brought the fees and schedule back, fees and charges bylaw, there was a mention of water and sewer connections, correct? And I know that's part of the water and budget that I was not attended here. But, so our connection fees are still, where are they now and where are they going?
$5,000 for water and $5,000 for sewer.
Okay. And how does that compare to what we have asked Swanks to do? And
I believe Swanks
Judgmental.
kind of goes up over the next few years. I think it caps out at maybe 10,000, or it might go to 7,500. But we can capture that if council wants, as far as the fees across the board.
Okay, well, you know, that would have been something I recommended, water budget, I wasn't here, so can't really, that's my fault, but, just looking ahead, that, you know, we have no development charges here, and we have three high-cost pieces of infrastructure that, you know, you talk about asset management, $14 million plant in Morrisburg. If you gotta replace that in 50 years, it's gonna be that 3 times, 4 times, 5 times more. And we should have some money set aside, and there's always things that within that expensive plant that need fixing from a capital point of view. So I would encourage it to ramp up over years. I'm not sure if that's going to deter people, but it's not like we're connecting to a hole in the wall in the ground like other municipalities. It's, you know, we have good filtration system and good water. So comments, and then Council Wells.
Yep, the one comment I will is that right now we are going through the water rate study, so that will be identified as part of that, which will be some recommendations brought back to council.
Okay, that's fair enough. Council Wells?
I just had one comment. I thought we already had it all discussed with Dutch Meadows.
Yeah, theirs is official, but that's them.
Yeah.
Not everybody else is jacking up to their rates as they increase over their
Yeah.
phases.
So it's just something, basically, as it goes down the road, it's just like any other fee, if it has to increase due to, like you said, more money going towards the water plant or stuff, or wastewater plant. So, no, I just want
Yeah,
clarification on that.
That's decided. It's, do we make the rest of the residents do what we have asked
Yeah.
Dutch Meadows to do over the long
Okay,
term? But
no,
the water rate study will certainly.
I'm good.
That'd be good. Okay, fair enough. Anything else on this? Now are you good with the amendments? How are you gonna deal with what we have on the floor? And
Sure, well, so we'll incorporate those and still, when we bring it back, the bylaw on May 24th, include the changes in red and just go through that before we request adoption of the bylaw.
and the other changes that have been requested of council on the
Correct.
specifics?
Yes.
Okay. Anything further? You're puzzled, Councilor Mel.
When we voted on this tonight, no.
No, this is just
Just
a
recommendation, okay.
recommendation and not the bylaw.
Yeah.
All right,
We
scroll
can
back
still
up the
defeat,
top.
we can defeat the bylaw if we don't like it when it comes back to council.
Okay.
Okay. All heard the motion. Those in favor? Opposed, if any, motion carries. Thank you. Now we're going into bylaws, which are yes and no's. First one is 2022-52 site plan control for the Iroquois Gas Bar Limited at 10783 County Road 2. Stephanie, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you for having me. So we received a site plan application for 10783 County Road 2, and it's a vacant piece of property on County Road 2. So of course, in the spirit of planning, these files often evolve since the writing of the report. So there's a slight modification on the recommendation, right, on the bylaw?
So, yes, in the bylaw.
In the bylaw.
Yeah, we'll let you present and then we'll read the
Okay.
motion and then we can explain the difference in the bylaw.
Okay. So this, the proposal is for a 3-story multi-res commercial mixed-use building. The proposal contains approximately 30 residential units on the second and third floor, and the first floor would be commercial. The footprint is about 7,500 square feet, or 693 square meters. And the applicant did include a traffic impact study, and there weren't any, due to the increased traffic, there aren't any proposed changes to County Road 2's entrance or the turning lanes. They did provide a servicing and stormwater management report, geotechnical report, phase 1 environmental site assessment, a topographic survey, and then the traffic impact study. So we did have a legal review done, and just due to the nature of the agreement, and a clause was added to the bylaw to address the condition. So typically, when we see site plan applications made, they're made by the current owner of the property, and in this case, it is an agreement of purchase and sale, and it's a conditional agreement of purchase and sale. So the agreement that the bylaw will seek to enter into will actually be with the numbered company at a later date, once that agreement of purchase and sale has been finalized. And then the legal review also indicated that there are to be no implications that if council ends up in the position of lame duck. But basically what you're doing tonight is just sort of supporting this proposal as a concept, as the site is laid out, and then the bylaw will address the agreement that will be entered into at a later date is just to be, the bylaw seeks to authorize the clerk's department to facilitate that.
Okay, I didn't have you read the motion, did I?
No.
Can you do that, please? Because
Sure.
this is getting a little on the
Sure.
confusion side, please.
So moved by Councillor Mellon, seconded by Deputy Mayor Gardner, that bylaw number 2022-52, being a bylaw to enter into a site plan control agreement with Iroquois Gas Bar Limited for new development, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed. So, as Stephanie alluded to, the lands as they currently exist today are in the legal name of the Iroquois Gas Bar Limited. So, but it's pending sale. So what we've done is added a clause in consultation with our solicitor this afternoon that indicates that council today is authorizing the site plan as presented, if you choose to do so, and a caveat in the recitals that upon sale and transfer of the property, the mayor and clerk be authorized to enter into the agreement with 969-5443 Canada Inc. and make the necessary adjustments to the agreement. So the agreement would go as is, but the names would be changed, pending the sale.
Okay.
So typically, the landowner.
Typically,
Yes.
people would buy it and do
Exactly.
this. So this is a little, I'm not gonna say loosey-goosey, but that's the way I look at it.
I would say that they have already shown an investment in the property by providing all of these studies to support what they're looking to do. And this is just a method to solidify their proposal.
And they're, and one of their concerns is council going to lame duck after August 19th and not be able to deal with this.
I'm not sure that it's necessarily a concern. This is just, as I understand from the planner that they've hired, that this is just their method of developing, is that they typically do agreements of purchase and sale on these land and then move forward as a condition.
Okay, Deputy Mayor, comments? Concerns, questions?
Well, I mean, one concern I have is not so much about about this. That's going to be a very busy section. We're going to have to do something with crosswalks or whatever. And I had said when I looked at the Tim Hortons, how they established, how wouldn't it be nice that if we're going to do that, that there's something included in you know, these agreements, a contribution, if you will, because they're putting X number of people across the road that are going to want to go to the mall. They're probably not going to drive their car. They're probably going to walk, and it is going to create a challenge for us and for the counties It already has, right? There's already concerns. So that's one of my main concerns is we don't really have any traffic control in place along that stretch. And it's getting bad enough with Tim Hortons in the school or Ross Video and Tim Hortons. You add an apartment building with residents crossing back and forth. We're gonna have to do something with it. So
would the suggestion that, we would request that if they wanted us to agree to site plan control, we want them to pay for a crosswalk?
I can certainly, is this something that you would like me to ask?
I think so, because it's getting to the point. I mean, with Tim Hortons, when we've talked at counties or whatever, any element that's put in there that is going to add to pedestrian traffic, we are then going to have a $50,000 or $60,000 problem to fix it to make sure no one gets killed.
Right.
So I think that there needs to be something added or some discussion, right?
Okay.
That would be one of my concerns, because you're all of a sudden putting residential and they're going to want to go to Foodland and the restaurants and stuff and the beach, which is fantastic. However, somebody's going to get hurt. So,
Councilor Lewis?
Well, the 3.5 years that I've sat here on council, I've never seen anything like this. I really don't know what to say about it. But I do kind of agree with the deputy mayor on the crosswalks, because we did an event here in the summer, and there was quite a few complaints about the kids going from the high school over to Tim Hortons, and it's a safety hazard. I could most likely, and you say this is the way that this company operates?
As I understand it, this is something that they do when they develop.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I could support it, I guess. It just seems a little weird to me.
I've certainly never seen it before, and neither had Peter Young. But it certainly, I think, sort of speaks to the need. And the units, I should say that the units that they're proposing are 1-bedroom and bachelor apartments. So there's going to be 30 residential units total. So I think it's sort of speaking to the housing market crisis that we're sort of in.
Okay.
Councilor Mellon?
As long as this isn't an end around to get in to do something that we're not approving here tonight, I have no real issue with saying go ahead with it. I have sort of an issue with the crosswalk. As much as you're right, Deputy Mayor Gardner, the traffic is there and I see it going back and forth. That's for the tax money that these businesses put into either the county tax, county road, and South Dundas. That's our problem, if you will. I'm not in favor of asking somebody to make a contribution to put a crosswalk across a county road. I think we can look at this, but I'm just not, that's like asking the business in Morrisburg here to pay for the crosswalks in the new streetscape. I'm sorry. They pay taxes. We have to find a way down the road to finance these things, and if we need a crosswalk, we need a study. So I'm not in favor of that. I guess I can live with this site plan control agreement as long as there's some conditions in there that this isn't an end around to get to something that we're not seeing here tonight. So.
Stephanie, you had your hand up.
I was just going to say that similarly, if there was a turning lane needed because of this development, they would be responsible for the costs. So similarly to the crosswalk.
And that's true,
comment.
Councilor Mellon? Like typically, okay, so we'll take the Pioneer Station in Winchester, where there's turning lanes and there weren't before. When they redeveloped that site, County said, you can do that, you're paying for the turning lanes, and they had to. Because they're adding an extra load to the infrastructure that is only specific for them. And what we're challenged now is that, as Deputy Mayor Gardner has well alluded to, it's bad enough with Tim Hortons and no crosswalk there currently, mainly high school students, and that's 10 months of the year. But if we have now a full-blown apartment building on the other side, and they want to come across, then there's going to be a demand for a crosswalk there. And somebody down the road is going to say, we're paying 50 grand for a crosswalk because this council didn't make someone do it. And just keep that in mind, because it's going to come out of your pocketbook down the road. And it's site-specific.
All right, I agree, we probably need a crosswalk, we need some kind of traffic control there for pedestrians and whatnot, but just, drive on.
Okay, Council Wells.
The site plan's a good thing. It's bringing what we need to this community. Like, we need housing, bad. As far as like Mayor Bibles, you're saying about the crosswalk and stuff like that. Well, this company here is going to pay a lot of taxes. Like, I mean, a lot to the counties, a lot to us. Then also you take in perspective that the counties there's a 4-story building right there now. There's 40 apartments in it that walk across the road to go to Tim Hortons. They're not going to drive, like you allude to go across. So you have that. The county should be, there should be a sidewalk there too. Like there's 40 apartments in that building. So when you get people like that I think is great. Like we've talked about housing and housing. So we got someone that wants to put money in our community. And it is a new norm because the cost of land anymore, before you buy a piece of land, you're gonna spend $1 million for an acre of land and can't do what you want to do. You just waste $1 million. So I see the step where, and as far as the bylaw goes, it just saves another meeting where it's already in the bylaw that the mayor and clerk can go ahead, because we already seen the bylaw. So I'm all for it. And as far as the crosswalks goes, well, you know what? That's something you could have a challenge with the other apartment building that's right on the same side of the road. There's already duplexes on that side of the road. So there's 1, 2 or 3 duplexes there now. So it's just something that I think would be good. So, and the site plan looks, every site plan, there might be the odd hiccup, but these are pretty good site plans. So that's my part.
Okay. My comment specific, okay. It'd be nice if somebody didn't hide behind a bunch of numbers. That's the first problem here. However, I understand the concept that for this thing to move, that number of companies has done a lot of money and spent to get to where we are. I have no issue with putting more commercial in Iroquois. I have no issue with more residential in Iroquois. I think what Deputy Mayor has brought up is a valid concern that this municipality is now going to end up paying for a crosswalk, pretty well guaranteed once it's up. And if we had development charges, if this was going in a development charged area, how much ballpark would they pay? Yeah.
Probably well over 100,000, I would imagine.
So we got nothing here.
Yeah.
We're asking for them to contribute to a crosswalk. I don't have a problem with that. If we were charging them 100 grand, well, shit, sorry, my language, we'd have the money to do the crosswalk. We'd have the money for the extra fire services. We have the extra money for everything else that comes along with it. Taxes only pay for everything else. You have to keep that concept in your mind when you're working here, because if you think their taxes pay for their services, it's not fair. Yeah, they're commercial and they pay 1.6. That's life. But it's just like those who live in a $1 million home pay twice the taxes of the 500 and 4 times the 250. We're not here to fix that system. We're here to look at this concept and make sure that it's good for South Dundas, no problem. Is there an issue that we see that we should fix when we're here? And that's a crosswalk. And I don't know what the traffic study said, but traffic is only looking at traffic and not specifically pedestrian. And we have this concern. Counties are actually looking at pedestrian issues now, but in the end, this municipality will pay, even if it's a county road. So keep that in mind as we go forward. Council Wells.
Like, I have no issue. I agree with you there as far like taxpayers and stuff. And projects like this, we want to put it out there, is that going to stop them from spending 4 or 5 million? No. But like I said, it's something like I would agree to. If you, as far as the sidewalk goes, sure. Like if we put sidewalk in there, 50,000, they're going to pay for it. But it's just, you don't want to lose people that are coming to our community and wants to build, like Dutch Meadows and this company and that, like we need housing. So like to get this passed, like, and ask them to do that, I'm sure it would go, so.
Okay.
But you are right about the tax dollars. The counties aren't going to pay for it. It's going to be enough.
It's going to be us.
Yeah, so.
And that is the essence of the problem, is the fact it's not that I don't want the development to go ahead. It's just I'm seeing the conversation once it goes in, because I really wish we would have had a broader conversation with Tim Hortons going in, right? Recognizing the fact that there needs to be getting ahead of what we need or what our residents will need, because the reality is we can sit here and say, no, don't worry about it, it's not our problem. Whoever's sitting at this table is going to get a ton of phone calls. I've already been cornered about, if something happens to my daughter, how are you going to answer to that? So I think it's being proactive, and I just, to the mayor's point, that's why people have development charges. The tax money is for the other stuff, that like bridges and roads and all that other stuff. Because that will be an expensive project. We'll have to put the crosswalk in, but then we're going to have to anchor the crosswalk with sidewalks on both sides. There's no sidewalk there now.
But also with development chart, okay.
It's not a
So
conversation now.
that is the key. And I will say too, there is part of me that is slightly uncomfortable about doing this feels like a blind deal. Like, you know what I mean? You don't know who, what, when, and fair enough, but we've had other deals with big signs that kind of went wrong. So I'm just saying, it's not, people that have nothing to hide had nothing. So it's just kind of, it's different for me. And if you guys are saying it's different for you and you've never heard of it, that's
I should say the gentleman's name is Stephen Ferrante. I don't believe that he's hiding behind his numbered company. I think that's just his business.
Okay.
Well, he is, because I could have said his name. I
Oh.
knew it was, okay?
Okay.
We just speculated it.
Okay.
And that's okay. He's a developer and he's done well in other areas. He can bring this to South Dundas. We're asking that we would like, from what I'm gathering of council, that we like consideration of a crosswalk within the site plan. Somehow, because right now it's Iroquois Gas Bar, and they're the one that have started this whole conversation on crosswalk. Now we have the opportunity to say, now you're paying for the crosswalk we should have had in the first place.
Okay, I certainly we can work with the county in determining a safe location for it, because it might not be directly right in front of it, but certainly a safe location for it, for sure.
Council Wells.
Okay. Go on to development fees. Development fees are good because it adds to, because they're adding to our infrastructure, like our water treatment and all that, right? So that's what development's all about when it comes to development. Right?
Yep.
We don't have any. We never did. And with about the crosswalk, this is a good time to ask for the crosswalk, but it's not a requirement. It's a requirement that we're, as councils, making. And I agree with the sidewalk, like one there, and we'll probably end up having to put, at one point, like if it becomes an issue about people crossing to go to Tim Hortons. So But everything else, like these companies, don't matter whether it's a number company or whatever, they all do their due diligence, what they're required of. It's like any business. If you're not required to do it, that's our job to ask them to put it in. So I'm saying it's a good thing to ask to put it in, like right now. But I'm just saying, when everyone comes, whether it's, you take Dutch Metals or whatever, they asked us for thing. It wasn't on the site plan. So I'm just a little clarification.
Okay.
But I'm good with the sidewalk.
Okay, so we've got discussions of sidewalks and discussions of crosswalks. My suggestion on this bylaw is that we defer it till we have more clarification on those two items. Because right now, the desire of council is that. And I don't want to defeat the bylaw, because that starts things the wrong direction. Deferring it will allow the proponents to at least hear us out. And yes, they have talked to staff, and I understand that, but council now has brought forward a specific thing that council desires to have in that plan that wouldn't be part of our normal site plan booklet. So, does that sound? Okay, so does council agree to a deferment till those two items are crystallized a little bit more from a staff perspective and county perspective, and then we at least can make a proper decision instead of saying, thou shall do it, but now we will say thou shall because this is why, or it'll say, no, we don't need it, and then we'll go from there. Does that make sense to all members of council? Council Wells, are we good?
Yeah.
We're not here to defer it forever, because I
No,
want it done before lame duck like anybody else. We're not here to stop stuff. We're here to make sure we do things right, and that's, so vote for deferral? Okay, we're going to defer that by law tonight. Then we'll move on to the next one. Yes?
I gotta go make a call.
Okay, you go ahead. You can be excused. You're not part of this discussion anyway, Councilor Wells. So I'll ask Madam Clerk to read the motion, please.
Moved by Councillor Mellon, seconded by Councillor Lewis, that bylaw number 2022-53, being a bylaw to enter into a site plan control agreement with Wells and Son Development Corporation for new development, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
Stephanie?
Okay.
We're well familiar with this one. Nobody's hiding on this one. This one's been across the table several times.
So an application for site plan control was made to construct a 3-story commercial building on vacant land located between County Road 2 and Industrial Road in Morrisburg. You've seen this before as it was rezoned to highway commercial, special exception 9, and it added a fitness center, medical office, laundromat, storage facility, and motel, in addition to the other permitted uses in the highway commercial zone. So in terms of the site plan, as you see in front of you, there is associated parking, bike rack, garbage facilities, and snow removal, loading, landscaping. You'll see some of that heavier landscaping along the industrial road side. They provided stormwater, lot grading, and servicing. And yeah, so it's, again, the same sort of thing. The applicant is the numbered company. However, it's not currently in their ownership at this present time. It's again as condition of purchase agreement and sale.
Okay. We're familiar with the site. Comments, questions, concerns?
I think it's the first time that we've had Iroquois and Morrisburg get a very similar looking building, so nobody can say one got one over the other. Yeah, I mean, my issues, and I've stated this all along, were, industrial park, it being residential, the proposed plan of a hotel and all those office things. I'm fine with it. Yeah.
Mr. Lewis?
Been down this road, I don't know how many times.
3.
If it's going to be built to these specs, I'm going to say one more time, I have no problem. But if those specs change, then I will have a problem.
Okay. As far as I know, we have not had the building design plans yet come across staff's table. Councilor Mellon?
I'm good, drive on.
Okay. I don't have any issues with the site plan. Council has approved the zoning. As Councilor Lewis has alluded to, if it stays that way, It'll be a new commercial venture and a place to stay in South Dundas, and that's not a bad thing. Can I get through, gotta go through this one for a second. We're almost ready for a vote. So, anything else further on this one? If not, all heard the motion, those in favor, opposed if any, motion carries. 2-minute break.
Excuse me, Mayor, I'm gonna.
Okay, thank you, and welcome back. Okay, so we've gone through 2 bylaws. Next one is 2022-54, part lot control Shirley, Morseburg.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Gardner, seconded by Councillor Lewis, that bylaw number 2022-54, being a bylaw to lift part lot control for 1A to 1F inclusive, Gibson Lane, Morseburg, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
Go ahead.
Right, so we received a part lot control application for a property on Gibson Lane and Lakeshore Drive in Morseburg. So previously, this was a 6-unit row house, which has since been demolished. And the reason we're going through part law control as opposed to a consent application, or also referred to as a severance application, is because this is a property that is on a plan of subdivision, and it allows, there's the provisions in the Planning Act that allow for a part law control exemption to be to separate the land instead. So in keeping with the same density, 6 units, the proposal is to split this property into four properties, 2 being for semi-detached dwellings and 2 for single detached dwellings. So any questions?
Okay, comments, questions, concerns?
No?
Nope.
I do. Truck transportation's not here, but we good with all new entrances on the curve? I don't have a problem with part law control. I guess that's
can
the
follow
next
up with-
one. The next one's going to be either the site plan or building plans, and those and where the services are there too.
Okay.
I'm not sure where the connection. All that has to be thought of. Not our problem, not your problem, but I don't want somebody to come in later and say we can't do what we can't do, because I know that some of those services may not be there.
Yep.
So.
I believe staff were on site, but I can confirm that and get back to
Okay,
you.
just, that was the only thing I had.
Okay.
No other issue. If there's no other issue, all heard in motion, those in favor? Opposed, if any, motion carries. Okay, that's it. Thanks, Stephanie, for coming to South Dundas. Next one, 2022-55, contract agreement with Oliver Keys tender.
Moved by Councillor Lewis, seconded by Councillor Mellon, that bylaw number 2022-55, being a bylaw to authorize execution of a contract agreement for the Oliver Keys Municipal Drain Maintenance Tender, be read and passed, signed, and sealed in open council.
Any comment?
This one was, Justin and I tag teamed this one, so we both,
That's okay, it's just a
No.
contract, so
Yes.
if there's no further.
No.
No comment, any comments from council on it, just contract? All heard in motion, those in favor, opposed if any, motion carries. Don't go away, 2022-56, contract agreement with Thorpe Ellis tender, please.
moved by Deputy Mayor Gardner, seconded by Councillor Mellon, that bylaw number 2022-56, being a bylaw to authorize execution of a contract agreement for the Thorpe Ellis Municipal Drain Maintenance Tender, be read and passed, signed, and sealed in open council.
Nothing further, Justin?
Nope.
Anything from council? Seeing none, all heard in motion, those in favor, opposed if any, motion carries. Thank you, Justin. Next one, 2022-57, Carmen Road Water Main Relining Contract for Action, Inc.
Moved by Councillor Lewis, seconded by Deputy Mayor Gardner, that bylaw number 2022-57, being a bylaw to authorize execution of a contract agreement with 4Action Inc. for the Carmen Road Water Main Relining Project, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
Shannon?
So this is the original agreement for the original tender that we did back in February. As council will recall, we've had some discussions on amending the scope of work and adding additional distance for the line so that we can capture hopefully the full federal provincial funding. So what we're looking at doing right now is 4Action is putting together some conceptual estimates to continue on, and the plan will be is to bring that back to our next council meeting on May 24th with some additional pricing for council to consider. And if council at that time deems it to continue on, we can look at then amending the contract. In the meantime, I have been in discussions with the province. They are looking for a project revision request. So although we had the full funding, our project was specific to the amount of meters that we were doing the water main relining. Province doesn't seem to have an issue with us expanding that as long as we can still rationale the fact that it's still improving our water infrastructure. So we're just completing a form that has to go for them for approval. We're not asking for any more funding. We're asking just for the allocation that they provided to us. So this at least gets the first contract moving in the right direction, and we'll come back in the next meeting with council with more information.
Okay. Any comments, questions, concerns on that? Seeing none, all heard the motion, those in favor, opposed, if any, motion carries. Next one, 2022-58 Taylor Road Bridge contract with DW Building Restoration Service, Inc.
Moved by Councillor Mellon, seconded by Councillor Lewis, that bylaw number 2022-58, being a bylaw to authorize execution of a contract agreement with DW Building Restoration Services, Inc. for the Taylor Road Bridge replacement, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
Shannon?
So this is just a contract in our follow-up to our tender that went out for the bridge, which was given to DW. This just executes the agreement and lets us to move forward with the planning of the other bridge.
Okay. Any comments, questions, concerns on this? Seeing none, all heard the motion, those in favor, opposed, if any, motion carries. Next one, 2022-59 Purchase and Sale Agreement, Cook.
Moved by Councillor Mellon, seconded by Deputy Mayor Gardner, that bylaw number 2022-59, being a bylaw to authorize execution of a purchase and sale agreement with William Arthur Cook and Betty Cook, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
Shannon?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So this is a requirement under the MECP that we need to purchase some property around the Matilda landfill for our contamination attenuation zone. So this is just an authorization to proceed with the purchase.
Any comments, questions, concerns from any member of council? Seeing none, all heard the motion, those in favor, opposed, if any, motion carries. Next one is 2022-60 Purchase and Sale Agreement with Third High Farm Services Limited.
Moved by Councillor Lewis, seconded by Councillor Mellon, that bylaw number 2022-60, being a bylaw to authorize execution of a purchase and sale agreement with Third High Farms Limited, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
Shannon?
Similar to the last purchase and sale, this is required under MECP.
Okay. Any further comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, all heard the motion, those in favor, opposed, if any, motion carries. 2022-61 OTA Data Agreement Renewal.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Gardner, seconded by Councillor Lewis, that bylaw number 2022-61, being a bylaw to authorize execution of an agreement with Data Wireless Network, Inc., be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Sure. So this agreement was originally brought forward for renewal at the last meeting on April 25th, and there were many questions raised, and I do apologize for not having the responses at that time. So this report lays out the responses to those questions. So just to confirm, in the 5 previous years from 2017 to 2021, we have been charging the 2% annually. So the chart outlined in the report shows what we have recuperated from Data. Also, with respect to electricity costs, they do have their own meter at their water tower and therefore billed directly for those costs as per the agreement. There was a question, I believe, raised by Deputy Mayor Gardner at the time about what other equipment might be on the site. So currently existing on the Morrisburg Water Tower includes equipment from ExploreNet Internet Services, Bearcom Fire Communications, and amateur radio repeaters, in addition to the Data equipment. It's also important to note that Data did pay to reinstall all their equipment after the water tower was refurbished. So as we mentioned last week, they are looking to renew the agreement for a 3-year term as opposed to a 5-year term. The $2,500 security deposit does remain in place, and the Treasury Department has actually outlined a preferred way of doing, instead of indicating in the agreement that a 2% increase annually, to actually stipulate what those 3 different amounts will be over the 3-year term. So that has been updated in the agreement. And that is all I have, unless there's any questions.
Okay, thanks for bringing the updated bylaw. Deputy Mayor,
No question.
we're all good now.
Thank you for your patience.
All heard the motion, those in favor, opposed, if any, motion carries. Thank you again. 2022-62 Mutual Assistance Agreement.
Moved by Councillor Mellon, seconded by Councillor Lewis, that bylaw number 2022-62, being a bylaw to authorize a mutual assistance agreement for the purpose of emergency planning with the 6 local municipalities of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry, and the City of Cornwall, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
So are you leading this, or? Chief?
Cameron and I both have our name on it. It was brought forward, sent to us.
Deputy
the-
Mayor and I are familiar with it
I
already,
was going to
so-
say, yes, it was adopted by the counties in April. Just let me get here. So previously, South Dundas had originally executed the agreement on January 19th of 2010. And then in 2013, I believe it was, the City of Cornwall signed on to the agreement. And the Community Emergency Management Coordinator at the county brought forward these updates. So there's minor editing modifications to reflect a current emergency management terminology. There's an updated indemnification clause from assisting municipalities, and they updated the insurance protocol as it relates to Section 11. Cameron did do a thorough review of the agreement and did not have any issues and is supporting us to renew the agreement at this time.
Okay. No further comment? No. Okay. Comments from, everybody understand what it's about? Okay, helping each other as if an emergency comes along. All heard the motion, those in favor, opposed if any, motion carries. Thank you, both of you. Consent agenda, please.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Gardner, seconded by Councillor Lewis, that all items listed under general consent section of the agenda be adopted as presented.
Tonight, consent agenda, we have a key information report concerning an update on the mandatory firefighter certification. It has gotten a little bit better. Key information report on the firefighter green light signs being proposed in South Dundas. And it reports on fleet reports, repairs from Fire Public Works, Economic Development Advisory Committee minutes, and new updates on the Provincial Animal Welfare Services Act from the Solicitor General. All heard the motion, those in favor, opposed if any, motion carries. Boards, committees, discussion items. County Council did have a committee of the whole last week. It was a rainy day, so I attended. As council is aware, committee of the whole reports are basically giving council information, and there will be reports to council later if there's any action plans. So the first one was a feasibility study on what to do with the historic SDG jail, which lies underneath county council and chambers and to the north a bit. And there's an annex put on in the 70s, I believe, and they are not being used right now, and we've had some money to have someone look at them to come up with ideas of what to do with them. We haven't done an engineering study, and that is something that council now desires to do on the building. The number one thing to do with what's there, besides a few other small things, is to have film production happen within it. I think council's a little, I wouldn't say cold to the idea, but they're certainly hesitant in how well it's all going to work. I think a lot of the principles of those who attended were that it wasn't going to cost the counties a lot of money, or it's going to make us enough money to cover all the costs. I actually had my first tour of the jail after the meeting, and I will say that the structure, the old structure, kind of reminds me of this building. There's no way it's going to fall apart. The new structure, which is a cement block type building and has lots of mold issues, is something that's probably going to be more challenging down the road. But everything can be fixed at a certain amount of money, I was told. So we'll see what happens. But we will be doing an assessment of the structure within the year. Deputy Mayor, any comments on that study per se?
I love tourism and everything, but it was a little pie in the sky for me without any numbers or return on investment or what it would look like. And of course, I don't know if people realize this, but the residents of Cornwall see that building as theirs. So that's the other issue, is the benefit of putting a lot of money into a county building that Cornwall tourism is probably going to benefit the most from. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but when you're sitting at the table and it's county's money, it's tricky to justify. So, yeah, it'll be an interesting conversation for sure with
Yeah.
the clock ticking.
Yeah, it wasn't called the SDG jail at that time. It
Yeah.
was the Cornwall jail.
Yeah.
Everybody knew it was the Cornwall jail.
Yeah,
So,
and online, that's how the residents refer to it. Whenever we first had the discussion, all the Cornwall people were saying, we can't lose more of Cornwall's history. We can't lose more of Cornwall's history. So it's an odd situation. It is a beautiful building, and I'm sure that there's, you know, from a tourism perspective, I'm sure they could do something. But in that report too, is they were comparing big things like the Parks Commission to the building and not having conversations with the little areas like the Lost Villages to see how they were doing. So yeah, that was frustrating, I think.
well, we'll see where it goes. I think it's, I guess, a small step in seeing if there's any use for this. The film, they are trying to establish a film industry in what they consider southeastern Ontario, which is Durham East. I did make the point, you know, if somebody starts from Toronto and starts looking for a place to shoot a film, they're going to stop in Prince Edward County and they're done. Or they'll go to Kingston and they're done. And I'm not sure they'll get all the way to Cornwall and say we found our right spot. Maybe for Montreal. But Montreal's got a lot of old stuff already, so we'll see where it goes. As you can tell, we're not over enthusiastic about it.
Not without a partnership, I think.
No, it's a long way to go. We had an economic development and tourism update from our economic development officer. We did amendments to the personnel policy manual and then talked about Next Gen 911, and something that would interest South Dundas is counties are looking at partnering with others on cybernet security, and that would impact us because as I challenged our director of IT, if somebody hacked us, could we get all their stuff back? He said, more than likely get all our stuff back. Our challenge is they got our stuff, and then what are they going to do with it? And that's and he did raise a lot of points because provincial fences is within that scope of stuff. So when it comes to personal data, like if somebody wants to know about our roads, well, have at her. But I mean, when it comes to personal information, that's something we can't really do much about. I did bring up an update on the waste management study, and that still is being studied, so I was disappointed in that, but that's it. Any comments, questions, concerns? Air Quad District Business Group did have a meeting. I did not attend. Morse BIA is in process.
We have a meeting Wednesday night at 5:15 for the new committee.
Good. I wish them all the success in the world. South Nation Conservation?
No meeting since the last AGM. The parks and the docks and whatnot are being put in, and there's the free tree giveaway is this Saturday. I believe they're working with staff. I see they haven't got it to be announced. Have you got a location yet for, because in the email I got from South Nation, it was, we didn't have any place in South, we hadn't picked a place yet.
We don't have a place confirmed, but all of our trees are spoken for, so we're just in the process of working with Kelsey to confirm.
How are we gonna contact those people? Because they need to know where to go. That's
Yes.
all I'm trying to get to, I guess. Okay.
And once we do, Kelsey, the SNC is doing the communication on our behalf of just where the pickup locations are.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
We're good? Morseville Waterfront?
Nothing to report.
Iroquois Waterfront, nothing to report. South Branch Community Fund?
Nope.
Carmen House Museum?
No, just waiting for the chairperson to get back to me.
Dundas County Archives, there was no meeting. Tourism Advisory?
Nothing to report.
Economic Development?
Nothing to report.
Doctor Advisory?
Nothing to report.
Wow. So, I guess it's okay. Those things happen. Okay. Key information report on arena entrance project phase 2. Mr. Jansen, welcome to council, we think. Actually, it's all right. I looked at him and you made me a little happy, but it's going to cost a lot of money to make me real happy. Go ahead.
So, good evening, Mayor and Council. So in front of you is a key information report. It outlines, so we've gotten our final report from Phase 1, which was our schematic design for upgrades to the arena. I know we outlined the project's been looming for a couple of years, and last year, whenever I came in, we came up with a strategy to get it moving at least. The end goal is to get it tender ready or shovel ready, ready for tender. We don't have all the finances ready to go for it yet, but if we can get it shovel ready, then we can be a little bit more grant ready as well. I know the municipality in budget, we have budgeted for the finishing of the design, and we've also begun to put money in reserves to pay for the project or a portion of the project ourselves. Outlined in the report, I must say the consultant prepared a very nice report. I'm quite happy with how the outcome of it. I think they gave us all designs that work for South Dundas and for the facility. Obviously, every design comes with a price tag, which I'm sure we'll get to at the end. Outside of that, all I'm looking for today is just a little direction from council on which option they want to move forward from. The funds are already established and budgeted for to move forward with design, and the outline, unless we're going to change the project design, I think all we're looking for is a little bit of direction. I won't get too in-depth into each of the options. I'll hope everybody had a wonderful chance to skim the report, but I'll answer questions if you guys have anything related to each option. I have reached out to all the arena operators have reviewed this. I did send it along to the figure skating group and minor hockey. They didn't put together a ton of comments, but they're happy to see it's moving. And I told them design still has to be finished, so they're going to work on getting me any comments that they have just to make sure that all the user groups are involved. And I did reach out to the SDNG Accessibility Committee. Again, we're taking one of our least accessible buildings and making it accessible, so generally positive feedback there as well. If you look through the 4 options, I'll recommend moving ahead with option A. It was the unanimous choice around the arena operators who spend more time in the building than any of us. And also financially, it was the cheapest option. So checked a whole bunch of boxes there. From last year's grant application, another box that it checked is the adding of the additional small change room. One of the spots in our grant application last year that we got feedback on was it wasn't really growing the facility or leading to future growth in South Dundas. One of the things that we've come across is there is more and more girls in minor hockey, and scheduling change rooms associated wise, it's going to be great for the users and for the facility to have one smaller change room that we can use either for that, or it gives us another tool in our toolbox when we're managing the arena operations. I think I'll leave it at that. I am recommending moving ahead with option A. We push to get the next tender out for phase 2 as soon as possible and keep the design going. And at the end of the day, we hope to come back at the end of phase 2 with drawings that are ready, a Class A cost estimate for Councillor Mellon to smile a little happier about.
I was going to warn him, it's Class D, don't get on us.
I will admit the Class D estimate in this report looks very good. I've seen Class D estimates where they take the square footage of the project and they just multiply it by the cost per square footage. The consultant here clearly put some thought into their Class D estimates, but it comes with a 20% plus minus caveat right at the top of it, so. But I'll send your
thoughts there, Councilor.
I'll send it back to you, Mr. Mayor, and again, if anybody has any questions about specific options, we'll address them at that time.
Hey, Councilor Lewis, you have the floor.
Option A was the one that I was gonna pick. I do like to hear about the small change room. That was always an issue whenever I was a director. I guess every team had 2 or 3 girls, and where do you put girls? We used to have them dressed in the janitor's room, because that was the only place we had. Thank God we had everything sealed off, but no, option A is a good option, and it'd be nice to see it when it gets done.
Councilor Mellon?
Yeah, I could guess 20% one way or another. I had to get that off my chest. I couldn't, sorry. Option A, yeah, it's, I think, the most cost effective and most workable, you know, that there is there. So I'm good with option A. Let's get that to Class B.
A. Deputy Mayor?
Option A, I think it's gonna really clean up that corner. I love the look of it, like just how it is. I'm very happy with the accessibility conversation. I think that is really important. Yeah, the girls hockey, I mean, it should be equal, the classroom, but whatever. Yeah, that's good. You're addressing all the issues, right? Which is kind of the purpose. It would be awful to go through this process and still have some, you know, some things that we weren't addressing. So you've gotten the equity and the accessibility. I mean, those are the two big ones, and it's just an efficient use of space. So, no, I like option A.
Okay. I did see an accessibility issue at the arena when I went to the trade show. An older gentleman that was in a walker and wasn't using the walker, he was sitting on it, getting pushed around. They had nowhere to get in except all the way around to the west end. So that doesn't work with hockey.
It's been an annual complaint every trade show.
Yeah, yeah. So it is a challenge. You know, most people who use the arena are not physically challenged, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't have an arena that people can get in and out of when they are. When you talk about equal girls and boys, this sideshow story, went to Fanshawe 77, 78, and there was motor power building at Fanshawe. There was no ladies' washrooms in any part of that building, and we had a female student in my course, so she made it her mission to make one happen, and it did. So, but that's 40 plus years ago now, so we're still not there, are we?
We're not even close.
Yeah, I know, but thought I'd say that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm good with A. I'd be good with C if someone else paid for it, because it gives us more room.
Yeah.
It adds to the arena instead of we're just taking up the space we've already got. You know, we could still have that other, where Sports Fix was, as something else, whereas we're adding more to it. So if we're paying for it, it's A. If someone else is going to help or pay for it all, then I would consider C as something that would, as I said, add to the arena. Yeah, it's going to cost a couple $100,000 more, $300,000 more, but I think the value is there for that. But as I said, I can certainly live with A if A is the way to go. So does that sound like reasonable?
The only thing I'd caution you on if we end up flip-flopping later is we're going to drive on with option A and bring it all the way to tender ready. If we end up getting funding and the council of the time wants to change the design, there'll be a cost associated with that as well.
I guess you can just somebody can bring it forth at that time. In the end, if within the next 2 years, this project should go. Whether we have money or not, doesn't matter. Somebody has to make the money happen.
Yeah.
Whether it's this municipality or someone, you know, we get funding. You know, maybe we need to annex ourselves to Leeds Grenville for a while, and maybe we'll be all right. But other than that, go with A, get everything ready. Keep C in your back pocket. But other than that, yeah. And you're right, you know, when we sent this out, we never know what we get, but this is a very comprehensive report we've got from Architecture 49. There's no doubt about it. It's you can take this one to the bank somewhat. Yep.
Actually, I have a question. We're going through the rec master plan at this particular junction.
We are.
Would this be, now that we have this plan, we're talking about recreation, we're talking about the future of recreation, we're talking about the You know what, like, how does this get included in that?
Does it fit? Does it?
This, I've had the discussion that some of this is coming with the consultants on the rec master plan,
Okay,
so they know what's coming.
okay.
Okay. Anything further? Anything further? We're good. Thank you, David. For that, key information report, Winchester Springs Park. Parking lot. Go ahead.
So this one, again, just for discussion, I'm looking for a little bit of guidance from council and which way you guys want to go on this one. As everybody here is aware, we severed the lot and Habitat for Humanity, I believe, broke ground today. When we were all out there for the groundbreaking, I did note that the parking lot for the old park was in the severed half, leaving the current park without a parking lot now. I'm just looking for a little bit of direction from council if we wanted to pull some funding from reserves or go off the bottom line and try and put in a parking lot this year, or if you're looking to delay it till next year. I will note it is a county road. It's probably got slightly narrower shoulders there. It's not an in-town park per se. So there is, if you're forcing people to park on the shoulder of the road there, it is a county road and slightly busier. If we do go ahead with the installation, we can do most of it in-house. I reviewed with Director Hyman, and he doesn't think that there'll be too many issues for either of us. It'll sort of come down to whether or not we have to put a culvert in or not. There's a slight swale there, and that'll end up on our county, on our entrance permit. We'll figure out how much effort is actually involved in putting in the additional entrance.
Okay. Parking lot?
As far as I'm sure, we need to put it in there now. It's like having a park and not being able to park. So let's get it done, and maybe the counties will waive their permit fees or requirements or whatever. They'll be nice to us. And, talk to our county reps, and maybe they can put a word in there, because we did it was a great cause, Habitat for Humanity, but anyway, do it this year. Get it done. There's not mailboxes there?
Yes, there's a mailbox almost directly on the lot line between what would be our park and the new
Okay, well,
house.
we gotta have some place, for people we don't want people parking on the road and going in to get their mail and then getting run over, and it's really not, that'd be ugly, so let's put a parking lot in there.
Is there any location chosen yet for the parking lot?
So I was gonna wait for it to go around, but my thought was I'd apply for the entrance permit, get those details, and then come back to council again. We could decide where we wanted to take the funding from, and at that point, we'd have applied for our entrance, and we'd be able to better nail everything down.
Okay, so you're just looking yes or no parking lot?
Yeah.
We can find the money.
There's always ways to find the money.
Yep.
Oh, I definitely said, when we were back there a couple of weeks ago, with vehicles parked on both sides of the road, it was a little scary. I think it should be done this year myself.
I have a different opinion. What do we have in the, what is the lifespan of that play structure? Because you have to look at the park all as a whole. So yes, we were there at an event, but we were there for an event. You're not going to have that many cars go to put their kids on a play structure. If the play structure is 15 years old, and I didn't see much of a play structure there, then we're putting in a parking lot to a place where families may or may not actually be using. So what's our user, I've driven by that hundreds of times. Very rarely do I see anyone on that.
You're gonna take
Play
away the
structure.
park from the kids that just are gonna have a brand new house?
They don't need a parking lot though. I'd rather spend it on a sandbox, to be honest with you.
Historically, the parking lot that was there was where the mailboxes were. So now they're on the county road, but people still need a place to park, so I think we're gonna end up giving them that parking spot. I'm in favor of the parking lot, so you're outvoted right now.
But
I will
I didn't get to
continue on.
finish.
One thing that does annoy me a bit is that the park is for all of Winchester Springs, not the South Dundas half of Winchester Springs.
Exactly.
We never asked North Dundas to contribute to that. Now, they do plow the sidewalk on the north side now, I've noticed. They do more sidewalk plowing than we do, but anyway, it never hurts to ask.
What I was going to say, though, do we have broader plans for that park? If we're putting in a parking lot for
We
more
just-
people to go, then what, like, you know, it's
Maybe
not.
maybe we need an outdoor rink there.
I'm just saying it should, you can't just piecemeal it. It has to be an overview of the entire park,
Okay.
you know, because the
I
kids
don't-
next door aren't driving to the park, so.
I don't disagree, and there's not, I don't know how many young families are in Winchester Springs. It's not a big place, but there's been a park there for a long time.
Yeah.
The old building served as a community hub for a long time. It's gone, and rightfully so. However, I still think that's an area of South Dundas that deserves a park just like everybody else.
But that's
And
what I'm
if we
saying,
need a
Mayor.
plan,
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Is there a plan to make the park better if we're going to have a parking lot there? People parking, having to use it, are we going to plan to make the park better? That's what I'm trying to say.
there's no plan now.
Not an immediate one, but I will say that the play structure and the swing set there are both relatively new, because,
There's a ball field there.
and there is I wouldn't call it a basketball court anymore, but previous basketball court there. The swings and play structure are 5 to 10 years, don't even know that.
I would say between 7 and 10 years.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah,
That's all
they're
I'm
not
saying.
that old.
yes.
And the swing set was put in the same time as the playground structure.
Because the old play structure used to be where the excavation for the Habitat House happened,
Yep.
so that was where the old play structure was, and that was only a few years ago, so.
Because all I was saying was if the park justifies a parking lot, then we maybe need to beef up that park a little bit more than what I saw. That's what I'm trying to say.
Sure, we can spend more money, and then we can really ask North Dundas for
There you go.
their development charges. We always is a good discussion, if I remember right. And if you think that was a good discussion, you never had the discussion with the Winchester Springs Rec Group when we told them we were gonna take the building down.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jerry Westenbrook and Steve Summers at the back of council, letting us have it, so, and rightfully so. Okay, so parking lot, yes?
Sure.
Yes. Bring us some plans.
What I'll do
And-
is I'll apply for the entrance permit, and once we
See
get
where it
that
goes.
through, then I'll bring back a plan and a cost to council, because then I'll have all the information that you're gonna want anyway.
Sounds good. Oh, got one more. The information report on our favorite subject, because before you came here, we had many discussions on flag policy. Go ahead.
So in front of you today is a amendment to the flag policy. I'm mostly looking to update our flag policy to fully match the rules for half-masting that's provided by the federal government. They provide an outline of all the rules of half-masting, when and where. This sort of sparked on April 28th was the day of mourning for people killed in workplace injuries. I noticed the counties had their flags down. I know some of our neighboring municipalities did as well. So I know the post office did, and the OPP reached out about the Justice Building here in town. So this is updating our flag policy to include the list of all of the days, the special days as they refer to them in the federal guideline for half-masting. The only thing that I have updated in our policy is with the locations, mostly because we surprisingly have a lot of flagpoles. And so it's locations, I have it at Cenotaphs and the Municipal Center only for these days. I'd say the only day that I was considering, or the only location I was considering adding was the plazas, which would be sort of in my thought now would be the roundabout flags and the ones in front of the Iroquois Plaza, but I left them off. So But if council wishes to add those into the policy, we can, but that's sort of where I put it as the right line between raising and lowering too many flags.
Mayor?
The half-mast thing is one of those things. If you don't do it and people know that there's the day, they're wondering why we didn't do it. If we do it and there's lack of communication, they're going to wonder why the flag is at half-mast. So I'm okay with this. I just want to make sure our communication plan kind of matches, so folks know what's going on.
You're still gonna have 5 locations.
Yeah.
I think as long as the people understand we're only doing 5 spots and not 8, because you're gonna get people that's gonna call the office and say, well, how come the flags at Iroquois that have mask and the ones at Princeton are full mask? And you're gonna get that as God as sure as God made little green apples. I know, I've been down that road. So I think, I don't have an issue with this at all, but I think you're gonna have to make it real strong that this is where, on these given days, it'll be half-mast.
Councilman Allen?
Well, I have a lot of these are federally, you know, dictated, I guess, if you will, when they're gonna be, you know, days and stuff. A lot of them are very close together, like November 8th and then November 11th, you know, and well, September 30th, like so we got to, if we're going to lower the mask, the flag at half-mast, it's got to be brought back up so it can be lowered again. I noticed that at last year's Remembrance Day at Dixon's, like, I mean, you know, it had been lowered and hadn't been brought back up and then lowered again. So yes, we go to, you know, to me, I don't know why we're doing a November 8th Indigenous Veterans Day and then November 11th Remembrance Day, you know, 2 days, 3 days, but that's a federal thing. Like, I mean, you know, to me, Remembrance Day is for everybody, veterans of all veterans, but anyway, you know, that's my only comment on that, and, but we gotta make sure if it's gonna be lowered, it's gotta be brought back up so it can be lowered again, especially in those, very tight, you know, September 30th, 8th to the 11th. It's pretty quick and well, last Sunday in September too. Is one, whoa, go back here, computer. Anyways, yeah, I'm good with it, let's, you know, I've said my piece.
Okay, I think we had a fulsome discussion last year on this November 8th Indigenous Veterans Day and doing the half-mast, and the council did make the decision to do so. I don't have an issue with the days if you feel that they can be done well and tastefully. I think Deputy Mayor Gardner brings up a good point, though, that there has to be a communication plan from us saying why we do it. Because I'll be honest, I went by the post office on April 28th in Williamsburg and wondered who died. I didn't know. It was the only flag halfway down, and I said, well, I didn't hear anything, and then it went back up, so okay, well, or something, but, you know, if, communication with everything is the key, but I don't have a problem with doing the rest, that's for sure, so. Bring bylaw next time, and we'll see.
You're good
what
with the
happens.
locations too, Mr. Mayor?
I'm good with locations. You don't need to do every one. We were just so specific on this one that cenotaphs are part of a little bit more memorial than average, so it makes sense in my books. And we'll see how it goes. I will give you credit, you're brave enough to bring this to council, because most of the time it wasn't brought to council. It just kind of evolved. I did bring it at times, so. Okay, anything else? Okay. Next one, Iroquois Manitoba Lions Club Community Garden Project Proposal. So I'm going to ask you to fill us in on, from your perspective of what their ask is. So in the letter that I received from David, no, it wasn't Carol
Yes,
directly.
It was from David, yeah.
David sent the letter, and I said it become the council, but what's that, when did that? No, I'm gonna pass it. Anyway, go on, and I'll find, there was a letter requesting funding, and if I remember right, when the Iroquois Matilda Lions came here last year, they were requesting funding also and a location. We gave them a location they didn't like, and I can understand that, but I don't know if we gave them funding. I can't remember that. So go ahead.
So, as you alluded to, Mr. Mayor, on June 14th, the Lions Club were here for a delegation. They presented on their community garden project that they wanted to move forward with. Council fully supported it. Additionally, there was $5,000 earmarked from the Parks and Recreation budget that was approved at that time as support from South Dundas. In August 13th, another report came back with an update with regards to the location that they had chose, which is across the road from Seaway and the easement there. They figured that used to be a gas station. There was some soil testing and a new location was proposed. Council approved the move to Haldane Park at that time. The project, it was late August at that point, so the project sort of got delayed and went through a few circles there. So I met with the group last week. Since moving to Haldane Park, they've picked up a few more volunteers from the Presbyterian Church there, right beside Haldane Park. There's a large community garden at the Presbyterian Church in Winchester, I believe, that is a success there. So they are looking to join on and join their business model, basically. It's added more volunteers to it, which is great for the little community group. The advantage to us is they're no longer looking to start the project on South Dundas property. It's actually going to start on the Presbyterian Church property. However, they are looking for the $5,000 that they were earmarked for last year. It's not included in the 2022 budget, but they have a business plan. They want to build 20 boxes at the Presbyterian Church this year to kickstart their project. They are reaching out to all the local groups for funding. They're going through the process, and they're hopeful that with a little bit of kickstart from the municipality, that once the dream becomes a little bit more of a reality and the boxes are in existence, the volunteer group will grow, the program will grow. They are looking now at a slight difference from, I believe, the Lions Plan. They've talked a little bit more to the food bank here, and they're looking to grow their program with them as well and share some of the produce that they're producing. That's pretty much all the information that I'll start it off there, and I'll send it back to you guys if you have any questions.
Okay, and just to let you know, the 5,000 wasn't budgeted last year either. So
No.
It was a council decision. Okay, Council Mellon, thoughts, questions, concerns? Thoughts on the donation amount? Yes, no, maybe?
It went from what seemed like a wonderful idea by the Lions, now they're coming to us, it's changing. I'm not willing to fund 15 boxes, sorry. $5,000. No, I don't, God. Like I say, it went from a really good idea by the Lions, now it's turned into something more. But anyways, I'm not in favor of purchasing 15 boxes or making a 5,000. We don't even know how successful we'll be. Are the boxes, are they going to, is individuals going to be, I guess, tendering to these boxes, and then they're going to, like they're saying, they're going to give some of the food to the food bank, but, I can imagine there's not going to be a lot left after the tomato fight in the middle of the night. But anyways, maybe that's just me. I'm not comfortable with this, Mayor Bylaws.
Okay, Council Lewis.
I do believe whenever Matilda Iroquois Lions Club come to us, we offered them 2 or 3 spots, and it ended up the spot that we gave them was across from the post office next to the apartment unit. I don't remember anything about $5,000 in cash. If I remember it properly, we said that we would give them up to $5,000 in man hours and equipment use to lift the sod, maybe give them a little ground, but I don't remember anything about $5,000 in cash. Now, saying that, no, I won't give $5,000 in cash. If to me, the original deal, and if I'm wrong, Shannon, please correct me, we were going to give them up to $5,000 in manpower and equipment.
We were gonna do something, because I met with Austin and Carol and Yvonne at the first site, and
Yep.
gave them some suggestions, because they wanted to remove the saw and do all that, and I said, no, don't do that, just, leave it and work with it, and then if you, especially since they were talking about putting boxes up, said, well, just put a piece of plastic there, build a box on top, put ground in, you're all good to go, and even the stuff that's underneath wouldn't have been an issue, but
they were going to build,
apparently
the Lions Club was going to build their own boxes. They didn't come to ask us for money.
some help, but site and some help, yes.
Just to give some context, the $5,000 came from was when they looked at the proposal of putting it across from the post office. In the report by staff, it was that we would include the removal of sod as well as the purchase and installation of up to 15 yards of topsoil. This is estimated to not exceed $5,000. So that's where the $5,000 came from.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so you're relatively close, so,
Thank you.
okay, so you're still?
We did budget $5,000, and I'm sorry, I'm not about to give $5,000. So definitely no.
Okay, Deputy Mayor?
I have always thought this project was fantastic. Don't remember the $5,000. Do you see in their report that they will be allotting and charging $25 and $40 depending on what size of garden that people use? So there is an exchange of money on that. The $5,000, I think Shannon for clearing that up. I don't remember ever thinking we were going to give that. So community gardens aren't supposed to be like that. They're supposed to be self-sustaining. There's lots of gardeners around with lots of seeds, lots of, it's getting everyone together and building and stuff like that. So still supportive of the project, still supported that we are giving them a space to do it, not willing to write a check.
Okay, there's your answer. Tell them we'll work with them, but no money. Okay, that's it for you tonight. Thank you very much. Okay, so I brought up the little addition. So I had a comment made to me this winter, and I thought it was something that at least staff could look at and see if it was a valid concern and go from there. So everyone's familiar with the exits from the Morseburg dock area. Whereas one, you literally almost force yourself to stop, which is the west one, because you can't see past the church and the shrubs. Whereas the other one is the speedway go right out. And that's where his concern was, because he'd be coming around Lakeshore and people would be right through there. So there's really, I did talk to Direct Transportation about it. It's not officially a road. So even if the sign was there, it's somewhat non-enforceable. But I would still like to have him bring if council concurs, bring a report back on if there are any options we can do there, especially on the south, on the east exit, because of that concern. If someone comes out and there's an accident there, it could come back to South Dundas because it, you know, sue everybody and hope someone pays. But the person who you know, was a fair, it wasn't an off the cuff. He must have got caught in it once and seen it happen. And I know you, Councillor Lewis, been in that dock more than all of us put together. What's your thought on that?
The Morrisburg dock can be a raceway. There's definitely no doubt about it. I've almost got hit 2 or 3 times coming down Lakeshore. And I drive a big red truck. Like, can you not see that truck? To me, yeah, maybe you can't enforce the stop sign, but it wouldn't hurt to put one up anyways. The intelligent people will abide by it. I was down Saturday afternoon, and there was 3, excuse the expression, complete idiots that went through that dock parking lot. If a kid would have ran out in front of them, the kid wouldn't have had a chance. So yeah, no, it's dangerous there. There's no doubt about it. And as you said, the east end is most likely the worst end because she's straight out onto the highway.
If you're going north.
If you're
and
going
most people
north.
are, 90% plus
Yep.
going straight
Yep.
north. And as I said, I'm not asking for a council decision tonight, but at least see where staff thinks and look at some options.
Yep.
And if the option is nothing, then so be it. At least we've done our job. But if there are options, then we can at least consider them. Deputy Mayor?
Sure. I mean, it's nice to have options, right? It's worth looking at. I mean, that is a problem spot. It's one of those things where you know, the people that are there every day know how to use it properly, but then yeah. I don't know what the solution is other than to move the entire parking lot somewhere else. But yeah, options are good. It'd be nice to look at.
Nothing wrong with having, you know, some kind of traffic calming or control, you know, study or look at. I don't think we need a study.
No, not a study per
but
se.
just-
We have
yeah,
in-house intelligence to give us some ideas.
Look at it, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Okay, so direction to staff to do so, please. Nothing else? No notices of motion tonight, Madam Clerk? Okay, so we're going to go back into close to finish up.
We are.
Okay, so before we do that, to the audience that's participating, we will be just doing a closed session, ratification bylaw straight after, and a straight adjournment after that. So this will be the end of our audio video for tonight. So before we do so, I'd like to thank you for participating in tonight's meeting, and we'll go from there.
Moved by Councillor Lewis, seconded by Councillor Mellon, that council proceed in camera at 8:49 p.m. pursuant to Section 239C of the Municipal Act. Personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, more specifically related to staff.
You're all heard in motion. Those in favor, opposed if any, motion carries. Thank you very much.